Hi guys, and welcome to another Phil and Jen in the Philippines. First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone that viewed the last vlog that I put through. As you probably all know now, I have to return to Australia due to a family matter. But I thought I'd make this vlog a little bit lighthearted, and there's no reason why I should stop vlogging. Doesn't matter where I am, because the knowledge goes with me anyway, and I will be returning here. So we'll see if we can keep some continuity. But first of all, as usual, if you could subscribe, comment, ring the bell, thumbs up, all that type of thing that you do with YouTube. As I said, the subject of this vlog today is a little bit on the light-hearted side. With me leaving the Philippines, it might be wise for you to know you have to get an exit clearance if you've been here for a period of over 6 months and you're an alien, which means you get a police clearance and this type of thing. But typical to the Philippines, nothing is easy here. And as everybody knows, I'm living in Dumaguete, and I went down to immigration, and I was informed at immigration that I had to go to Cebu to obtain that. Now, information is very difficult to get. If I go to Cebu, how long does it actually take? You go to the old friend Google and you put the information in, and it gives you an answer at least, but you know how accurate that answer is, I don't know. So that all sounds pretty easy. The problem is this time of year, and what I found interesting, for me to fly from Dumaguete to Cebu, which is only a hop, skip and a jump away basically, because of the time of year, it would cost me only 2,000 pesos less to go from Dumaguete to Cebu, probably a half hour in the air, and return 2,000 pesos less than it is costing me to go from Dumaguete to Sydney in Australia. So it obviously has something to do with the time of year it is, getting closer to Christmas, and that's even if I got a seat. The other alternatives for me to travel to Cebu is a fast ferry, a catamaran style of ferry. That trip would take approximately 6 hours, or I can get the bus. Now I just looked online as far as booking for the ferry, and they're booked out. All of the ferries at this stage of the game. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there's not seats. It just means I can't book online, but do I take the risk? So it looks like I will be taking a bus. Yes, there is an agent here close to immigration where I could have put my paperwork in, but they don't guarantee, because I'm leaving in only a matter of days, that the paperwork will be back by the time of my departure. And the unfortunate thing is they have to have my passport for that application if they do it via remote control. So that's not an alternative. So it looks like I'll be 6 or so hours on a bus to travel a relatively short period of time, get off, then I'll join the queues, I have no doubt, with immigration. I don't know how long the process is going to start to be from start to end. So I'm flying blind. So I may not be a happy little bunny at the end of this exercise. Anyway, enough of my woes. I will probably leave tonight on the night bus, travel the 6 hours, get there in the morning, and hopefully immigration will entertain me on the day, and I'll be able to get those applications done and my clearance so I can get on the plane early next week. Right, some of the things you're going to see in the Philippines. Apart from that, as I said, that's my tale of woe. It doesn't stop what you're going to. If you eventually get to the Philippines, and I'm talking to the guys that probably have only been here for very short periods of time, may have noticed, or have never been here and considering. And when I came back to the Philippines, I noticed a number of things which I thought were confusing and hilarious, of which I will point out to you now. Now, I'm a beer drinker, you know, and of course there's the national beers here, which is made by the brewing company of San Miguel. I'm not a big drinker by any means. I probably would partake of a couple of beers per week, because that's a thing you can fall into as an expat here through lack of things to do. You can end up with a serious drinking problem if you don't keep that in check. But anyway, the thing I found funny here, and a lot of Aussies and Kiwis and whatever will will probably scoff at even the idea, was that here it's not unusual. In fact, it's preferable a lot of the times that if you're drinking what they call long necks here, which is the 1 litre plus bottles of beer here, they add ice to the beer. Now, a lot of the guys at home are going to say, oh my God, sacrilege, you know, they're killing a decent beer. And of course, that was my attitude when I came here. You know, putting ice in a beer, watering it down, you know, how horrendous would that be? Excuse me. But I soon got used to it because, you know, like even a beer that comes out of a fridge, if you're drinking out of a long neck, which a lot of people do in the provinces, and not the smaller bottles, and it's the most economical way to drink, I soon started putting ice in the beer. And I've since gotten used to that. It doesn't diminish the quality of the beer, I don't think, because it doesn't last long enough in the glass, but it does keep it cold. And, you know, for those of us who drink a little more than they should, which is, as I said, my limit's about 1 long neck beer that I share with Jen. But if you drink more, the added advantage of putting ice in the beer is obviously it hydrates you. You may not wake up with a hangover through dehydration. So that was one thing. And I, as you can see, I've put up slides to give you the examples of those. Those 2 beers that are probably the most popular here, San Miguel Light and San Miguel Pale and things like that. And then there's Red Horse. Now, Red Horse, just as a word of warning to you beer drinkers over there, is a pretty strong beer. And you know, to the Aussies that think they can have a beer or two and not affect them, be very, very careful. It sneaks up to you and hits you in the back of the head like an axe. So don't think you can come over here, and because Australians are big beer drinkers, I think you can knock that over and it's a piece of cake. And for you Americans, even more so. The Americans happen to like a lot lighter ale and alcohol content. So be wary of the old deadly Red Horse. Now the second thing, that's my beer drinking days and advice over and done with. A couple of other things that I noticed here that is hysterical as far as I'm concerned, as we spoke about in the Law and Order video. Even though there's uniformed officers of one description or another all over, whoops, sorry, all over the Philippines. And I'm only talking from what I've observed. I'm not suggesting Manila because I haven't really spent enough time in Manila to comment on it. I presume it may happen here, but there seems to be police, or at least a paramilitary presence and traffic wardens everywhere, but there doesn't seem to be any effective, what we would consider to be highway patrol. Considering the melee that takes place as far as driving is concerned here, you would think they would be fairly active, but they usually leave traffic enforcement to the traffic enforcement officers. And it's highly unusual to see a police motor vehicle pull over any form of vehicle unless they've had them under surveillance and whatever. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, you know, but it's unusual to see. We from the West, we often see a patrol car sitting behind some motorist that is aired and getting a ticket written. Well, that to my observations happens very, very rarely here. What they usually do is set up one could say like a traffic sting type operation, usually at a major thoroughfare, and they stop the traffic coming through. And what I also have noticed, the majority of times that they stop traffic, if you happen to be a Westerner in the car, they're kind of reluctant to pull you over. I'm not saying they won't, but they seem to be. They often wave expats on, whereas they may have a lineup of motorcyclists, including Westerners that are driving motorcycles, or trikes. And they're obviously checking for licenses and this type of thing. So it's not unusual to be driving along and then all of a sudden you will see a mass of bikes and trucks parked on the side of the road. And as you go down the road a little bit further, you will see the traffic wardens pulling these people over. Now, what I find hilarious is once the people know that there is a sting operation in place, they just pull over on the side of the road, obviously because they know they have some kind of infringement, whether it be a substandard motor vehicle or no helmet, or they're carrying more than they should on the bike, or for whatever reason, they pull over within viewing distance of these traffic wardens or police and sit and wait and watch. So you have hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles and trucks sitting on the side of the road, only meters, and when I say meters, 25, 30 meters from the stop, just waiting for them to leave. I just think it's hilarious with my background that they're obviously infringing somewhere or another. Why the police just don't wander up the road with their pads and go through the people sitting on the side of the road? Well, this doesn't happen, but it is rather humorous to see these obviously infringers sitting on the side of the road with the attitude, "I will outweigh you." So that was another thing that I found interesting, and that happens. Well, I've only observed that in the areas that I've been, in the south and even here. The other thing is that usually you'll find here when travelling on the roads, and something to be very, very watchful of, especially at night, there are these barriers that they put up for a monumental amount of reasons. There are a barrier that goes across your side of the road, and in this particular case you're driving on the right-hand side of the road, because it's a left-hand drive vehicle, whereas it's the opposite in Australia. And they put these barriers up, and you've got to weave around these. They're not actually checkpoints, they're just barriers. And virtually, from my observation, almost anyone can put these barriers up. You find them in front of schools. If there's a funeral going on in the home, people put these makeshift barriers up on the road to indicate to slow down because there's a funeral going on. Obviously the Department of Main Roads puts up barriers. So from one day to the next, and on many occasions, you don't realise that, if you travel that road a few hours beforehand, realise there was a barrier here, or where you're proceeding from, all of a sudden it disappears for whatever reason. Or worse, you've travelled a road that has no barriers, and you're travelling back in the evening when visibility isn't good and whatever, and all of a sudden there's a myriad of barriers up. So they don't use any great illuminating paint or lights or whatever, so you've got to be very, very careful when travelling on the roads here. The other habit they have, which is a terrible habit as far as Western drivers are concerned, because a lot of the roads here are concrete, and the concrete cracks, or they have to repair the road, or there's a pipe broken underneath it, they dig up this great piece of concrete that used to be a road, and it might be a sizable chasm appears, and then they put the barrier up at the edge of this particular chasm. So you'll be driving along it, and all of a sudden, if you were to miss that barrier, you'd find yourself disappearing down the Grand Canyon. So driving here and travelling here is a challenge, to say the least. So be aware of the old traffic stops. Always carry your licence. As I said beforehand, you can travel around the Philippines on your country of origin's licence for approximately 2 months. But when you start to extend, they expect you to change it over to a Filipino licence. The other things that I find interesting is how many people, especially from the West, that say, "Oh, I know a situation there as far as the women are concerned. There's a lot of gay people there and whatever." And yes, there is. Well, there seems to be a disproportionate amount of gays in Asia, not just the Philippines, than there are at home. I don't think there probably is a disproportionate amount. It's just that it's so open here. The LGBT community is very visible in the Philippines and Thailand and whatever. And it is homosexuality is decriminalised, but it's not to the point, being a Catholic country, where it's decriminalised to such a degree where they have equal rights to heterosexual couples. So they can't marry, they can't adopt, and officially. So there's a number of idiosyncrasies along the lines of LGBT, QRST, whatever the initials are. But you will see them in the form of just straight out gay guys or lesbian ladies. I don't know if that's politically correct to say that, but on the same token, you get what I'm getting at. In positions in both government, you'll also see transvestites or ladyboys. Hold on one moment. Sorry guys, I was just called for an errand. As I was saying beforehand, I think I was talking about gays or LGBTQ population here. You'll find them in fields of endeavour that is considered to be normal here and very in your face, for want of a better word. So get used to that. A lot of hairdressers here are ladyboys. A lot of government positions are held by gays and ladyboys, which, as I said, should be expected because they are so visual here. You see them. But if Asia's not a country, if you're homophobic, that you should come to if it affects you to any great deal. So that's one thing to consider if you have that homophobia about you. Asia is very open, and they're very integrated in societies, both in Thailand and the Philippines. And usually they're a lot of fun. When I say they're a lot of fun, they're funny. They're heavily involved in the entertainment industry and whatever. So that's one thing. I even though I travelled to Thailand, where a lot of you guys have been, and there's ladyboys, very beautiful ladyboys in Thailand. They just seem to be more. There seem to be more here, simply because I think they're integrated within the system and it's totally acceptable. And historically, the LGBTQ community has been integrated within the Filipino society since time immemorial. It's totally acceptable here for them, which is, they're open to equal opportunity. There are a lot of school teachers and nurses, and so that's not unusual. And then, of course, you've got the disproportional amount of pretty young ladies here. These ladies are visible all over the place. They are masters of makeup. In fact, probably better makeup artists individually than I've ever seen anywhere in the world. They scrub up well, for want of a better word. They're naturally pretty anyway, and then of course the addition of clothing and makeup and whatever, they are stunning looking people. You've noticed the overlays, and the reason I've talked about stunning looking women is the overlays that you've just witnessed are all ladyboys. Now, I used to pride myself in, as most Western men do, so I can pick a ladyboy from a mile off. Well, as those photos you just witnessed, it's not that easy. These are very feminine, tiny, good-looking people, and you can not take for granted that they're males or females. Fortunately, over here, and I say fortunately because one doesn't want to get involved in a situation that is distasteful. The majority of ladyboys will tell you straight out, as in Thailand, that hey, I'm a ladyboy. Whether you like that or not, it's not a really hidden thing here. It's not an act of deception. They will tell you straight out that they're ladyboys. So you're not going to run into a situation a lot of the times where you may be whining and dining someone, and then all of a sudden at the most inopportune moment you find out that they're boys and not girls. And they're not offended. Well, as I said, they volunteer the fact that they're ladyboys most of the time. So that was something that I had to get used to. Not, as I said, I have no problem, but the sheer volume over here. I'll think of something else. Yes, I've thought of something else. The other thing was public holidays. We in Australia have a lot of public holidays, and they're usually paid and public holidays, and we like our public holidays. I don't know about the United States. I know they have 4th of July and Christmas, but I don't think they have anywhere near the amount of public holidays that Australia has. But over here, every second day seems to be a public holiday of some description, from celebrating the national heroes and they observe every religious holiday, and being a Catholic, supposedly Catholic-based country, there's a lot of religious holidays. They all observe those. And then you've got government public holidays. And the most confusing thing for me, and a lot of people that actually live here, there's so many public holidays, they lose track of them. So you could be going into town to do something at a government office, not realise that all of a sudden, hey, everything's closed, the banks are closed, this is closed, and then someone will inform you, usually a security guard or something to that effect, that, hey, this is the public holiday for so-and-so and it won't be open. Now, they do have a penchant for, if a public holiday falls on a Thursday, what the hell, we won't open Friday as well and give us the whole weekend. So be prepared for that. As an example of that, me just getting to Cebu to get my clearance, I could have left today, and minimise the amount of worry time. But it happens to be a public holiday of some description, even today, the Wednesday, the week before I leave. So, and I wasn't aware of that until I decided to go down and go to the bank. So they're not advertised in a way that they would be in the West, and they just sneak up on you. So be aware of that. They're all the quaint things about the Philippines. There's a million of them. The things that we find strange, but it makes up the Philippines. When we were talking about drinking beforehand, in the provinces, Tanduay, which is the national drink, something I just thought of as well. That's an interesting feature that I had to get used to, and it's a little off-putting until you realise that's this is the traditional way it actually happens. When you are with a group of fellows and they've invited you into the situation, don't be surprised, and as I said, this is mainly in the provinces, where everyone sits in a circle around a table at an entertainment area, listening to karaoke, and there is a Tanduay bottle on the table, a large one, 26 ounce or whatever it is, fluid ounces, and there's one glass and ice. And the situation is that the person puts a nip of Tanduay on the ice, or whatever mixer they may be mixing it with. He drinks that, everyone sits around, then he passes the glass on to the next person. Now, if you're going to be finicky about germs and you're a bit of a germophobic, this really isn't the place for you. One, you can't, recoil in horror. If you ask for a separate glass, it's a little bit off-putting. I wouldn't do that if you're trying to mingle. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, and it rotates around the table, and you get involved in the traditional way they drink. This may be as simple as because they may not have glasses as we know them, so everyone doesn't have an individual glass. It could be 10 sitting at the table. It also regulates the amount they consume as well, if they're waiting for the glass to come around. So that's something. But when I was talking about germophobia, to get your meat and fish and this type of thing, you usually go to wet markets. Yes, there are butcher shops here and fish markets as we know them, if you hunt them out with refrigeration or whatever, but the majority of foodstuffs are in wet markets, and everyone knows wet markets from the latest COVID situation in China, and it was beamed all over the world, but that's not unusual. There's no refrigeration, the meat is hanging on hooks. Fortunately, here in the Philippines, there aren't a great deal of flies, or there hasn't been a great deal of flies in areas I have been, not like Australia. You could imagine putting meat out unrefrigerated on a chopping board, and 5 minutes, like the blowflies would fly off with it. There's that many there. But here, there isn't a great deal of flies, but there are flies here. The smell is something you've got to get used to. The pork and whatever, which is the staple food, is killed in the morning, and so it's fresh. They don't hang the meat. It's usually gone by lunchtime. So when you're doing anything with meat, whether especially in a wet market, you get down there very early after the kill and you pick up the meat. I suppose to tenderize the meat, as Westerners, we could hang it at home, but the fellows don't traditionally hang their meat, which means that they've got to boil the crap out of it to get it tender, or they've got to cook it for long periods of time. The other thing is that when we're talking about meat celebrations here, a lot of people will know if you have a celebration in this country, from birthday parties through to show everybody else that it is a celebration and it is expected, you supply lechon. And now, more than likely, everyone's heard of lechon. It's virtually the old spit roasted pig. It's done in a particular way. It's very salty on the outside, but a good lechon has a skin by the time it's finished and rotated that you could almost crack with a spoon. And then, of course, the meat inside is juicy and whatever. I am not a huge fan of pork to start off with. I'll eat it. And lechon, I can't really understand the love affair that Filipinos have with lechon, because to me it's very salty and whatever. But you know, when I go to a party and they offer lechon, which they do very proudly, I obviously take sections of lechon and devour that. I don't eat a great deal because pork's hard to digest and whatever. But every celebration, weddings, funerals, everything usually has lechon involved. Now, if you put on a party for people, if you arrive here, it's expected that you, being a Westerner, you'll put on lechon. 40 kilo pig will be selected. It'll then go down to the Lechon house 9 times out of 10, unless you're in an area where they'll do it themselves. But the majority of the time they'll send it to a Lechon house from the piggery. That Lechon house will dispatch the pig and they will cook it, and it'll be delivered to you at a specific time, usually wrapped in cardboard. And I mean wrapped in bits of box and whatever, and tied up with a nylon type bow material, and there it will sit in pride of place in the middle of the table, and everyone will be salivating. Don't be surprised if you put on the party. You expect people to hang around. A vast majority of people are there for one reason and one reason only, and that's the lechon. They will swoop in on this poor cooked pig, and it's almost like piranhas. You know, they love their lechon, and they will step back, and then 15 minutes after the lechon is devoured and they've picked up their takeaway, because that's another thing that's expected here. Not only will guests arrive, it's the tradition that they load up with food and they take it home. So when you do a party, provide little plastic takeaways, and they'll take proportions of that food home. But only the key group will probably stay at the party. All these people that suddenly arrived will dissipate into the night or into cars and disappear because they've been fed. Now that for us is very difficult to get used to, until you realise that is the norm here. The other thing about birthdays and weddings and whatever, it doesn't happen everywhere, but in poorer areas, you put on a spread for a wedding or a birthday and you feed everybody. Don't expect presents. Don't expect the guests that you invited to turn up by themselves. There may be 5 or 6 people with them. You've always got to over cater. And one of the worst things you can do in the Philippines is under cater. You know, it's considered to be, I suppose, rude, or even though you're not expecting 100 people, you've only invited 25. You've got to really organise it so you have food that for an amount of people you're not aware of may turn up. Don't worry about, oh my God, we've cooked all this food and we didn't get 100 people, we only got 50. The Philos waste nothing. The 50 will even take excess food home, so you're not going to be left with all this stuff. So there's some of the quaint things, and there's a million others. It's an exciting place if you keep your mind open, that I found about the Philippines. It really is different from anywhere else in Asia. The more you get to know it, the better it is. The more you find out the reasons people do things, the more acceptable their actions become. And you're not going to change these customs, even though they may be an affront to your normal situation. This is the way it is in the Philippines, and this is the way you've got to get used to it. And if you relinquish, what you think is right and just go with the flow, you'll have a great time here. People are so friendly. If you do have a party and whatever, you'll have a great time. If you can get over the fact that karaoke which is an integral part of any party, is blazing in the background, and every man his dog sings. And talking about karaoke, the biggest misunderstanding about the Philippines, in my mind, think is that everyone over here has this fantastic voice. Well, that's not the case, as I've spoken about in the other videos. But you'll get a lot of great and good singers here that partake of karaoke. You'll get just as many, if not more, absolutely horrible people as far as singing is concerned, that can't hold a note, that have no idea. The wonderful thing about it is, if you step back from how bad these noises emanating from the microphone are, no one is critical of people that have a go here. They'll get up and they'll applaud just as loudly. They won't turn around and say, "Oh my God, she's terrible." They're not like that. They take it for what it is. They take it that people are having a good time, as bad as it may be on your ears. And they encourage everyone, including yourselves. You'll come over here, and if you don't think you can sing or whatever, it doesn't matter how badly, they get such a kick out of the host, especially a Western host, and they won't make you feel bad. They'll have a laugh, but they're laughing not at you, they're laughing with you. So partake in that. Well, that's about it. It was a bit of fluff and bubble and whatever. It's things I found in the Philippines that amuse me. I'm sure that if it's your first time here, hopefully this will resonate in your mind as you see these things, because you will see them. And if you're coming here for the first time, think of it as a challenge. It's something new. If you wanted to go and retire in a place that is exactly like the place you came from, this is probably not the destination for you. But okay, guys, as I said, subscribe, ring the bell, thumbs up. I hope you have a great day. I'll be busy. I'm trying to do as many vlogs as I can before I leave, but they may be not as regular as they were before. I look forward to seeing you in the next vlog. It's Phil and Jen in the Philippines. And just another thing, I'll try to get Jen to do a vlog beforehand. Her shingles is getting a lot better. We had an interview the other night on YADS, and I suggest you look up YADS, YADZ. She does a live stream from Cebu, and we're interviewed by her. Had a great time. She has some great guests, but check her video out. Her channel's out. It's Yads Amoda. Just whack it into YouTube and you'll find it. Okay, guys. Cheers from me. We'll see you quite soon.